This is the recorded lecture for chapter 21 on the kingdom Protista. We covered this in class. We covered some of this in class already, but I wanted to do a little bit of a review before I moved on to the new supergroups, the supergroups that we didn't get to. So this table is extremely important. You need to somehow find a way to learn this information. I know it seems like a lot, but you really would need what, 1, 2, 3, 6 flashcards. And I would put supergroup excavata on the front of the flashcard and then the groups of the excavates on the back of the flashcard and learn them. Learn that the excavata consists of the diplomonads, parabasalids, and euglenozoans. You can do this and not even really worry about examples, like, for example, the euglena, and for the diplomonads, we learned Giardia. So you can just make a flashcard that has the supergroup on the front and the members on the back, and just test yourself until you learn them. The chromalveolata is the largest supergroup. It consists of alveolates and straminopiles. So in this table, you have the alveolates listed first. The dinoflagellates, apicomplexans, and ciliates are all alveolates. And then the diatoms, golden brown algae, and water molds, also known as the oomycetes, those are all the straminopiles. So it's a large group to remember, and within this group you have the top 3 are the alveolates, and then the bottom 2 rows are the straminopiles. The supergroup Rhizaria consists of cercozoans, which we really don't cover. I won't test you on those, but I will expect you to know the foraminiferans and the radiolarians. Excuse me. The supergroup Archaeoplastida includes the red and green algae, as well as the land plants. So the only ones from the kingdom Protista are the algae, okay? Then you have the supergroup Amoebozoa, which includes the amoeboids and the slime molds. And the slime molds are plasmodial and cellular slime molds. But anyway, they're all called slime molds. Okay, so the Amoebozoa are the amoeboids or amoeba and the slime molds. And the Opisthocanta are the fungi, the choanoflagellates, and the animals. And the main thing to know about the Opisthocanta is that the protozoans, which are called choanoflagellates, share this supergroup with fungi and animals. Okay, so let's move on. Well, what I want to do is for every time that we come to an example. Okay, so our first example that you have to know is Giardia lamblia. Giardia causes severe diarrhea, and Giardia is a diplomonad, which of course is in the supergroup excavata. Then we have Trichomonas vaginalis, which is a parabasalid, and it is in the supergroup excavata. And there's a picture of Giardia, the indentation or circular marking that it makes on the surface. This is a Giardia under the light microscope, so that's more what it would look like in lab. And this is an image of Trichomonas vaginalis, which causes an STD only in females. Okay, so we have 3 groups of excavata, and that would be the diplomonads, the parabasalids, and the euglenozoans. So in the euglenozoans, you'll have to know the euglenids and the kinetoplastids. And the euglenids, we just call, there's just one organism to know, and we just call it a euglena, and we will look at that in lab, a living euglena. Looks kind of like that. And kinetoplastid example is Trypanosoma brucei, or Trypanosoma gambiense. The second word of the scientific name doesn't really matter that much. Make sure you know it as Trypanosoma. Trypanosoma causes African sleeping sickness, and it's transmitted by the tsetse fly. So it's a kinetoplast or kinetoplastid. And that's a picture of it. And under the microscope, it looks like a wavy purple worm scattered among the red blood cells. Here you can see more what it would look like in our lab under our microscopes. And now we move on to the supergroup Chromalveolata. And you need to know the dinoflagellates are alveolates in the supergroup Chromalveolata. The Alexandrium species can cause red tides. There's a picture and there's a microscope image. And then we have the apicomplexans, which are the second group of alveolates in the Chromalveolata. And our example is the Plasmodium species, which causes malaria. It has part of its life cycle is inside of a mosquito and part of it is inside of human blood. And this is what it would look like under the light microscope. Ciliates are our third and last group of alveolates. We have two examples. That would be the Ichthyopteris, which is, you can just know it as ick. It causes fish ick. And the Paramecium, which is the one that we will see in lab. This is what it looks like under the light microscope, the preserved slide that we have of it. And then the middle picture is more what it's going to look like when it's the living Paramecium that we're going to observe in lab. Okay. Now we're going to move on to the Straminopiles, diatoms, which are composed of silica, which is glass. They are composed of a glass shell. They're very beautiful. The golden brown algae, the brown algae, these are all Straminopiles within the supergroup Chromalveolata. One example of brown algae is kelp, and one of the, I guess you would say, economic benefits that we have of brown algae is it's a source of algin, which is used as a thickener for ice cream and cream cheese and sherbet. And the oomycetes, or more commonly known as water molds, you just need to know that there is a water mold that is responsible for the potato famine in Ireland and the mildew of grapes in France. So these water molds can feed on some animals and plants. And these are, again, water molds are in the Straminopiles, which are in the supergroup Chromalveolata. Now we're going to move on to the supergroup that we didn't get to in class, the supergroup Rhizaria. Rhizaria have pseudopods, little thin thread-like pseudopods, which are really extensions. Pseudo means false and pod means feet. So they're like false legs or false feet, but they're thread-like extensions that help it to move. We're going to concentrate on the foraminiferae and the radiolarians. The foraminiferae have a skeleton that's called a test, composed of calcium carbonate. And it's going to have openings in the test, and the pseudopods will extend through the openings, and then that's how the foraminiferae move. You need to know that foraminiferae can be used as index fossils. In other words, they can be used to date sedimentary rock. And deposits formed by foraminiferae form the White Cliffs of Dover, which you can Google if you want to. They're kind of pretty. Then we have radiolarians who also have a test, but their test is composed of silicon. And it looks a little bit different. I think the radiolarians are prettier under the microscope. But So here's some images. The top image is a foraminiferan, and then the bottom, the one that's got the white test with all the holes in it. And we do have this in lab as well. We have a slide of the radiolarians in lab. So the supergroup Rosaria, the organisms in the Rosaria have pseudopods, and our examples are foraminiferans and radiolarians. Then we're going to move to the supergroup Archaeoplastida, which consists of two groups of algae, the red algae and the green algae. Red algae is most commonly what we find with our multicellular seaweeds. They do have red and blue accessory pigments. So not only green, but red and blue. They are important economically because they produce agar. If you remember, we use an agarose gel in our petri dishes to grow our bacteria on. But agar is also, it's a gelatin, so it's used as a bacterial culture medium. It's used in cosmetics, dental impressions, drugs, capsules for drugs. Then we have carrageenan, which is an emulsifying agent that's used to produce chocolate and cosmetics. And then sushi wrappings are also composed of red algae. So red algae are in the supergroup Archaeoplastida. There's an image. Green algae are also in the supergroup Archaeoplastida. And they're going to contain the pigments, primarily chlorophylls A and B, and they carry out photosynthesis, which the red algae carry out photosynthesis also. Most of the green algae are unicellular, but we're also going to find some filamentous and colonial ones and multicellular ones. So Chlamydomonas is the unicellular green algae. It's our example of unicellular green algae. Here's an image of it. There's the life cycle of Chlamydomonas, so you can kind of see a better image of it. So it's unicellular, it has two flagella. It's kind of similar to Euglena, but it only carries out photosynthesis. It's not a mixotroph, it's an autotroph. Then Volvox is a colonial green alga. This is what an image looks like. Our slide in the lab is stained, so it's kind of a pink color instead of green. But it's a ball of individual cells. Here's two Volvox slides. So Volvox is going to just be a ball of colonial green algae. And then Ulva is a multicellular green algae, commonly called sea lettuce, and that's what it looks like. And charophytes are filamentous green algae, and the example that we have, which we also saw in lab, is Spirogyra, and this is what Spirogyra looks like. It's in the form of filaments. So this is our Spirogyra. Okay, so that was supergroup Archaeoplastida. Remember, it's red and green algae, and they share that supergroup with land plants. Now we're going to talk about the supergroup Amoebozoa, and this is where we're going to study an amoeba in lab. Amoeba proteus is the scientific name. It's commonly studied in biology labs. And you may have heard of the brain-eating amoeba, the one that can like crawl up your nose and get to your brain, and you would die from it, is Naegleria fowleri. But the one that we study in lab is not dangerous. It's harmless. It's found in pond water naturally. What you see with amoeba is that the amoeba has these extensions called pseudopods, and it moves very, very slowly by streaming its cytoplasm toward the direction it wants to move, and these pseudopods will change shape, and they'll elongate, and they'll help it to kind of crawl slowly toward wherever it wants to go. So an amoeba also feeds with its pseudopods. It wraps its pseudopods around the food and engulfs the food by phagocytosis. So anyway, this is the supergroup Amoebozoa. This is more what it looks like on a slide in our lab, stained pink, and you can see the pseudopods here. You can see one here. You can see one forming here. But they're constantly changing shape because